I understand.
Yes, my king.
I am not your king.
But I wish you to be.
What would I want with a traitor in my midst?
I can tell you of a village that lies unprotected, where you can gather young women.
I have plenty of women.
Slaves and weaponry.
And plenty of weapons. What I want is the Emperor's bow.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong.
All right.
That's Hyperion. Hyperion there.
I'm gonna shove my fingers in your eyeballs. Give you a deep tissue. Where's that franchise?
When I think of Mickey Rourke, I think of Yes Man with Jim Carrey. There's a lady who's trying to get a loan, and she has a cake with him on top of it. And it's Mickey Rourke. No. He asked if it's Mickey Rourke, and it's Bono. There you go.
I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
To his left,
Irina.
and to her left,
It is I, Hyperion.
also known as
Noah.
And getting his groin hammered to a pulp so he can pursue a brief life of servitude under Hyperion, we have...
I'm still recovering.
Ice. You need lots of ice.
Your voice is
AJ.
deeper than I thought it would be.
And AJ.
It's all right.
Today-
You could have picked the guy that got his tongue cut off. I mean, that would have been
That's
hard.
true. That's not quite as fun. Today or tonight, whenever you may be listening, we are talking about Immortals, a movie that came out in 2011, directed by Tarsem Singh, who is also known as just Tarsem. So he's one of those one-namers, just like Patoff from Catwoman. You remember that?
She's very put off.
That'll. He's also known for directing The Fall, The Cell, Mirror Mirror, and Selfless. Mirror Mirror is kind of an outlier in that bunch there, but it's still like a lavish production, so I could kind of see it. The movie stars Henry Cavill, Stephen Dorff, Luke Evans, Isabel Lucas, Kellen Lutz, Freda Pinto, and Mickey Rourke, with a screenplay by Vlas Parlapanides and
job.
Charlie Parlapanides. I assume they're related.
No.
It's actually a very common last name.
Yeah. And if you're new to this show, on this podcast, we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. So, Irina, had you seen Immortals before your research and viewing of the film for this episode?
Yes, I thought I had watched it with you, and turns out I didn't.
Turns out I have
watched
not
it.
seen this.
Which was so weird to me because it seemed like one of those movies you would have seen before me.
So not to... I guess I'll just, since you brought me into the conversation, I'll say my part. I've seen the first 20 minutes of this movie. Like, so if there is a situation where we did watch it together, do you remember me maybe walking out, or did we see this theatrically?
That sounds like a theme that happens
didn't-
with you a lot.
Yeah.
I didn't see this in theaters. I know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you put it on, I watched 20 minutes and rudely left the room.
No. I think it was more like my mom is a huge Henry Cavill fan, so she put it on.
I thought that was post-Superman.
I was
though.
just about to say that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, yeah,
but
no.
But
She
she
watched
still would
this
have watched it
after
because we didn't
Superman.
watch it
True.
in theaters. So it still fits.
Makes sense.
How about you, David?
I think I saw this like right when it came out on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever it was. I saw it right when it came out. And look, I want to say I did not have a great time with this the first time. There's a couple scenes specifically that lead to that, and we'll talk about it. But who knows how I feel now.
Some that AJ has experienced firsthand.
Well, that may or may not be part of it, yeah.
AJ, how about you?
No, I hadn't. I really remember the trailers, actually, and being interested in seeing it, especially being Peter Jackson, but I never got around to watching it.
Time out. Peter Jackson? What did you watch?
Mortal Engines?
Mortal Engines. That's got to be it, right?
We're not talking about cities eating everything.
No, we're not. We're not talking about Mortal Engines. That's actually directed by Christian Rivers and produced by Peter Jackson.
Oh,
So-
don't.
Thank
I
you
never
very
said directed. I just said Peter Jackson.
True. You're right. You did not specify. That's my mistake.
Reese was
there.
just ready to call you out on that one.
I shouldn't know that, but I do.
You shouldn't know that. I don't know why you do know that. It's a good thing you have your own podcast.
So, serious answer. I had seen this actually. So, yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, wow.
There you go. We're switching it up a little bit this week. We're going to do the story portion in 2 segments versus the kind of paragraph by paragraph that we've been doing in the past. David has taken the old Wikipedia article that we normally read from and are consistently frustrated with and altered it to his own take. And so he's going to be spearheading the story portion of this, and we'll be reacting. So it's not too different, but
It's going to be roughly the same. We got a different flow to it slightly. And if you guys feel like laughing or joining in or having something to say when I'm going through it, let me know.
Long before man roamed these lands, there was a war in heaven. The victors declared themselves gods, while the vanquished were renamed Titans, and forever imprisoned within the bowels of Mount Tartarus. King Hyperion and his legions seek to unleash the Titans and wage war upon this world.
I will end the reign of the gods.
If there is one human who could lead them against Hyperion, it would be Theseus. I have faith in you. Prove me right.
I don't know if I can do what Zeus asks of me, but you can see the future.
I cannot change the future. You can.
So this is a new take on the creation of the Greek gods. A race of immortal beings wage war on each other that lasts around 10 years. 12 Olympians win. They are now the gods. All the other gods who lost are called Titans, and they're imprisoned in Tartarus. So in the land of men, we have our supervillain, King Hyperion of Heraklion, a man from humble beginnings, a peasant. His family was dying from disease and famine, and when he prayed to the gods as a child to save them, did they help? No, they did not. So, as he grows up, he makes it his mission to destroy the gods that ignored his cries. So he slaughters anyone in his way, building up an army that would bring a tear to Saruman's eye, yada yada yada. To accomplish his god-slaying goal, he has to find the Epirus bow. This is a bow that the gods used to take down the Titans back in the day. So he'll use it to free the Titans and watch them take over. You may ask, why on earth is the bow on Earth and not with the gods? A valid question. One of the gods dropped it and figured it wasn't worth looking for. To locate this bow, he needs to find a virgin oracle that can tell him where it is. So the plan is as follows. Step 1, locate virgin. Step 2, beat her till she tells him where the bow is. Step 3, find the bow. Step 4, kill the gods. Step 5, profit. All right.
I think the verb is prophesy.
Prophesier. I don't know. All right, cut to our sexy Superman Theseus. Another peasant who was just living his life with his mom and training to be a warrior with a random old guy he met one day, as you do. One day,
trees.
Exactly, because that's what you do to be a warrior. One day, Theseus and army man Lysander get into a spat that results in Lysander getting the crap kicked out of him and dishonorably discharged. A day later, King Hyperion sends his troops to Theseus's village, and he has to fight to get his mom back. He does his best side-scroller impression as he kills many men, only to be captured and watches Hyperion kill his mom. Superhero origin vibes. Thankfully, Hyperion is merciful, super merciful, and doesn't kill Theseus. He just sends him to mine some salt with the other hunky boys.
he likes peasant boys.
Super hot, hunky peasant boys. Theseus and the boys are hot and sweaty and chilling by the pool when 4 women walk by. These are the oracles.
That sounds like there's a punchline there somewhere.
There's no punchline here. They don't get punch. They're only allowed water.
Actually, they do.
You're going to get punched. Hyperion found the oracles, but it turns out only one of them is the true oracle. Her name is Phaedra, and the rest are Spartacus. We're not sure why the oracles are at the salt mine pool, but Phaedra brushes her ankles against Theseus and has a vision that he and Hyperion are best friends and holding the Epirus bow together. She is now emboldened to break out of the salt mine pool club, and Theseus with her. At night, they trick some guards, stab them, run them off, and keeping a couple of Theseus's boys with them. Time to go find Hyperion and get some payback for killing his mom. Meanwhile, Lysander defects and goes to Hyperion, claiming to have knowledge that can help him. Next thing he knows, he gets his face slashed and his balls crushed by an interesting interpretation of a Minotaur. Now, he and Hyperion are square.
Okay, so Immortals. This is kind of like the third entry in the kind of Greek mythology resurgence during this time. We had 300. We also had Clash of the Titans. Wrath of the Titans wasn't out yet, but this was kind of in vogue at the time. But I feel like Immortals is the first one to kind of really put its own spin on it. Like this is not your father's Greek mythology. This is something different. Did y'all feel the same way? Like, because this feels like art house Greek mythology. Almost.
Yeah, it felt like I don't want to say off-brand because that entails bad, but it's like an off-brand Wes Anderson Greek film.
Yeah, like
I know what you mean.
You know,
symmetrical shots, all the very angular designs to everything.
There's some backgrounds that look like a painting. And
well, the thing is that was on purpose, though, because he modeled it off a actual painter.
Yeah, right off the bat,
Caravaggio.
there's so much
Caravaggio.
There's so much like iconography and stuff, and it's no matter how much you dislike this movie, you have to give it this one point. It is visually stunning.
Oh yeah,
in a lot of ways. Even the green screen, which I found to be very obvious at times, it was still tastefully done green screen.
It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice.
Yes, exactly. It was like, we know this doesn't look like an actual backdrop to this scene, but it looks good still. Everything looks like it is one of those postcard-worthy moments where every scene is like, that's a nice postcard. I'll send that to my grandma.
Even beyond visuals, it was clear that they were trying to, or Tarsem was trying to, represent mythology in a brutal way, whereas all other representations, even though they're action-packed and I guess they're just more PG than this movie is, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think he was trying to put on a show that was a little more accurate to the kind of the brutality of the time, I think, and what it would really be like to have a conqueror sort of infiltrate your land.
He is one of the more intense supervillains that I've seen in a while. Yeah, like, he has no mercy. I feel like compared to any other one, he would crush your balls anytime.
Yeah, I think we brought up the topic of do you feel tense in this moment? Do you feel like the build up? And in the previous movies that we've been talking about, I didn't really feel that. Everything felt safe, even though people actually died. But here, I do feel that. I feel dread. So it's clear that there are stakes.
Were pulled.
And maybe this was some foresight on the director's part, but we are introduced to the villain Hyperion, played by Mickey Rourke, before we are introduced to Henry Cavill's Theseus. Maybe there's a reason behind that, because Hyperion really, I feel like, drives this movie in a weird way. Like, he's omnipresent. Is that a word?
I mean, it is. He is omnipotent, maybe, but I think he is being a good villain.
That's omnipotent.
Omnipotent?
Yeah, also the wrong use of that word. But that's totally
wrong.
fine.
I was wrong on both fronts.
That's fine. It's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the point is, I think having a good villain is very important in a movie. I think it ties with what Irina was saying. You kind of root for the guy who's super evil because you want your protagonist to have something to fight against, so you actually believe in the fight.
Mickey Rourke, I think, out of all the actors in this movie, is the highlight here as Hyperion. He is just so maniacally evil. Like, there is no good bone in this guy's body. Every single line is... It should be like a villain cliche line, but he just really milks it for everything that it's worth. I think he kind of carries this movie on his shoulders because I
don't know if he carries it on his shoulders, but I think that this movie wouldn't be the same without him.
Well, think about it. He is in every scene where you see Theseus. What's in the back of your mind? Like, for me, it was, what's Hyperion up to right now?
Yeah.
Like, where is
behind
he at?
behind every protagonist is a strong supervillain, right? Like,
yeah,
that's how I see it. And he, not to say that Theseus was weak. Like, I think it was great. But when you have a good villain, that's what's driving the plot.
I think this is one of the rare occasions where the protagonist and antagonist have switched in basically what I like and dislike about this movie. So for previous films, I've understood the protagonist's position and I get their motivation. I do get Theseus's motivation in this, but he's a little blank.
One-dimensional?
Yeah. It's but the antagonist in this has, even though his motivation is essentially the same as Theseus, he makes it work, and you can tell there's something really off about him, almost like he's a devil may care kind of attitude and to life. And I think that he is the one thing I'll remember about this movie, if not visuals.
I was always wondering, why does he have so many followers when, like, the initiation process is basically getting brutally scratched in the face and then your balls just completely disintegrated?
Reese, you misinterpreted. That is not the initiation process. That is what he did to Lysander because he was a defector.
I think there's a few more of his cronies reveal their faces and they all look scratched.
It's a subjugation, so he rules out of fear. And so a lot of them are betting on him, essentially, to be the winner in the end. So they're like, I'll accept this fate if it means I'll keep going and be on the winning side.
Like him or hate him, they think he's going to win, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So I did touch on this.
Maybe they all hate the gods, too.
I did touch on this briefly, but how do you guys feel this movie handles Greek mythology? Are you happy that it takes it in this kind of new direction, or did you want it to kind of adhere more to kind of what we classically know as Greek mythology? AJ, you got any thoughts on this?
I personally really liked it.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's, the other ones we complain about, Liam Neeson's take on Zeus, that's not Zeus. Or, all these other ones, that's not true to, Persephone or whatever. Like, everyone messes up, especially the Western interpretation, how we've received as a society modernly to, what was believed or talked about traditionally. So if you're going to change it, like deliberately change it and do it so, in a stylistic way. Yeah.
Right.
And that's what they did here, and it worked. Instead of just screwing it up and, ticking
everything
off.
else was like a slight offshoot. This is not even close. I don't know if you haven't watched the movie, this is nothing like your standard Greek mythology. It is completely different.
This is, without a doubt, my favorite depiction of the gods of all the movies we've seen. And just how Olympus is overlooking the world.
Yeah, it looks
I
awesome.
think that is crazy.
This is where a visual interpretation of the film kind of helps it.
I love his interpretation of his depiction of Olympus as this kind of cold, dark place that is just overlooking this.
Kind of uninhabited. There are only four beings.
It looks
no.
In Tartarus, the Titans locked up. I mean, the Titans don't look like giant, beings. They're all
completely different.
Like, basically in that cage, and you have the Atlas type figure. So I mean, that was all visually. I don't know. Yeah. I personally enjoyed it.
Yeah. I just love all the visual touches in this movie. Like just seeing the Titans in that cage with the kind of the rods through their mouths. Like, I'm like, this. I've not seen anything like that before. Yeah. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. But it also begs the question, like, why didn't why they sealed them? Why didn't they just kill them?
Yeah. I'm just going to say I did not react as strongly, or I guess I did react strongly. It was just not the same way when I first saw this. I think it's easy for someone to come into this movie and be uncomfortable and caught off guard and unhappy with the portrayal because it's not what we're used to being shown. You have to be open when you're seeing this movie to new ideas. This is not your standard mythology.
Yeah.
So
Well,
you have to
you
have
can
an open
almost
mind.
even come to this movie and just completely divorce it from Greek mythology.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it very much does not feel as Greek to
so.
me.
I remember when I was looking into interviews with the director, and I know David has mentioned this before too, but sort of this splicing of different cultures to create a new world, essentially.
Yep.
And retelling the Greek mythology through that. And essentially, Greek mythology has gone through a sort of renaissance anyway. We've brought up things like Shakespeare before and stuff, so even the Europeans had created their own iteration of Greek mythology, and a lot of what we know of Greek mythology is through their visualization of it. So that even it's kind of like this is second cousins, essentially,
Yeah.
of what we understand of Greek mythology.
Yeah, it is just, this movie is just taking the very bare minimum of like, hey, here's things you recognize, and then just going wild with it, like just taking it in a whole new direction.
I feel like this was, I don't feel like I know that this was definitely more intentional than most directors, I feel like, when trying to portray a different concept such as Greek gods. And they had a lot of different people on set, as Irina was saying, and here is a quote from the actual director on that. He said, "Just like the Renaissance redefined the Greeks, we are kind of doing that in our own version. That will naturally start to happen when you have an English production designer, a Japanese costume designer, and an Indian guy telling a story about the Greeks. So I hope it makes the movie as universal as it can be." So it was very, very intentional to have as many different perspectives. So this doesn't feel like this has an origin. It doesn't feel very American or Greek or Indian or Chinese or Japanese.
Yeah.
It's just all over the place.
Yes. So we haven't really talked about the story, but we catch up with Henry Cavill here. We're introduced to his Theseus, I guess we'll say.
He is Theseus.
That is his name. Yeah, Theseus. He will be the one carrying us through this story as our main kind of protagonist. This is also his, I think at this point when this movie came out, he had been recently announced as like he's going to be the next Superman, and this was the big entrance to Henry Cavill as a leading man.
This is his first movie as leading man?
Well, he was in Stardust
He had been in other movies, but this was like his first big budget, I'm leading this movie kind of role. What do y'all think of Theseus, played by Henry Cavill in this movie? Do you think he carries it? Also, let's kind of compare him to some of our other protagonists we've already kind of covered in this little mini-series here. How does he compare? What are y'all's impressions?
It's very similar, I think, to Perseus from the Clash Wrath series. It's just slightly more defined, I think. I think he has more reason to hate the villain and want to actually save the day. But it's kind of like that, I'm upset and I have to, I guess I'll stop the villain, I guess. I hate him.
My only qualm with his character is that in the very beginning, he's being mentored by this old man, which turns out to be Zeus. And Zeus is educating him in the ability to fend for himself and defend others, especially the weak. And I guess you can attribute the weak to those like his mother, but it seems like mostly he's just fighting for his mother. I feel that for me, Perseus in Wrath of the Titans was a better portrayal of the heroic figure in my mind. Theseus is a little just kind of driven by anger and still deemed righteous, I guess. Yeah. But I'm fine with that. It's just, it feels like the messaging is kind of mixed. I don't really know what
his motivation is.
His motivation is supposed to be driven by, or what his message or his role in the grand scheme really is.
Yeah, I felt like the writing for a lot of this movie was kind of sloppy. Because there's times where I forget that Theseus is in the movie, where I never forgot that he's in the movie. But like I'm like, oh, I'm caught up with kind of what's happening with the villain here and all this other stuff with the gods is happening, and then it cuts to Theseus, and I'm like, oh yeah, Theseus is on a quest. It was just kind of like, yeah, he goes through the motions. Oh, by the way, half of the IMDb facts for this movie were just how Henry Cavill prepared for the role. Like, he got 8-pack abs. Like, so from a physical standpoint, he's totally in it.
He's a hot boy.
But I don't think the director focuses on him enough and really tries to
flesh out his character.
Yeah, flesh him out a lot. I think he's 100% in it.
Yeah.
But
he's fleshed out.
Yeah, he is.
Okay, in one way. I mean, we need a three-dimensional flesh out.
We need a fleshlight on him.
Why? Okay.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something before.
So in response to that, he seems more of a humble human rather than, a demigod born with this random spoon in his mouth. Like, he does have mentorship, but it's on the practical, material side of things. It's not, and he's already got, this disbelief in the gods and society, but he's still stalwart. Like, he's consistent in his character, in his will, and his determination, which is not something you can say of Jason or any of the Perseus depictions, in my opinion.
Right. I don't know. What about Percy, though?
Okay, I'm super... Yeah, Percy's... He can't think unless he's in water, so...
True.
But
no
they
words to mix up.
They all go like back and forth between I'm on this grand quest and suddenly I don't believe in the gods or whatever. But it's just because you feel like that's their fate, because it's the deterministic kind of side of things, where Theseus here feels human and it embodies that and, kind of grows into that demigod figure leader.
Yeah. I actually think our opinions can coexist, because I actually don't see fault in the performance and what he's doing. I see fault in the amount of screen time he's given. For me, it's just like, I want to see those moments of the in-between times from we see the big revelations, less of the build-ups.
The contemplations.
Yes. Yeah. So they missed a lot of the, I guess, momentous nature of his mother's death. And how that affects him. They kind of just, had him angrily yelling at Hyperion, and then that was that. He's at salt mines. Maybe he's depressed, but they don't really, back whenever he comes back, lay her to rest. It just doesn't have any of the emotionality.
Yeah, the problem is it seemed like he wasn't even thinking about that. He was like, I
think he's more, his character is supposed to be more gritty.
Yeah,
I suppose, and I get that. I think what my main issue is the gods' involvement. I think the gods are kind of humdrum and silly.
Disagree.
I like the...
Disagree.
No, I think they're silly.
You're just personally offended because Athena was slighted in this movie.
Oh, she is, but that wasn't the reason. The reason is they're just kind of like... I think Zeus and his reasoning for all this is very vague, and I wish it could have focused more on the desolation of this moment. And since Theseus is a character that doesn't believe in the gods anyway, but his mother did, I would feel more for his plight or understand more like the grittiness that he goes through if the gods were less focused on in the movie. Like if they were kind of hang on. Like if they were just kind of a mention or only partially involved, not so much screen time. I don't know. There's just something about them that's like flashy superhero, but
they're
not
some of my
really
favorite moments.
It's
much.
interesting because I completely agree with you, but I have a different takeaway.
Okay.
On the gods, kind of sitting back, and you're right, they're vague and they just kind of sit there and stare and then randomly get mad and intervene because of whatever the law is. But I actually think that emboldens and strengthens Theseus's motivation. Like, he has a strong sense of right and wrong in society and justice, and stands up for, the lower class or whatever right off the bat without believing in the gods that are, or some morality code that's handed out by religion or whatever. And so he brings that and almost proves himself to be more worthy because of the lack of the gods' involvement. And maybe that's what Zeus, you're right, it wasn't really told to us or, fleshed out in the movie, the role of the gods really, other than just kind of sitting and staring and then, oh no, the Titans are out, we got to stop all this. But
right.
In a sense, them taking a back seat kind of helps strengthen Theseus's, I guess, fiber of a being.
Yeah. Well, which is why I wouldn't want quite so much screen time for them. To me, anytime they were on set, it kind of looked like an excuse to create just some Renaissance piece of art and then some silhouettes of cool costumes, which I appreciate.
And you can't have a Zack Snyder-esque action movie.
So here's my dilemma with this movie, and so far, we're not even halfway through it yet.
Yeah.
But I think this movie is very visually driven. It's clear.
It's obvious.
Priority is this movie is going to look badass in every single scene. Like, that is our goal. And to achieve that, we have more gods in more scenes. And for me, like, I'm grading this actually more on a visual standpoint than a story standpoint, which is something I don't normally do. And if they had taken any of this out, like the god stuff that I think is actually totally awesome, I might have graded this movie lower. Like, I kind of threw the story out the window watching this.
The more you complicate things, the more chance there's for them to mess something up.
Yeah. Like, I was like, okay, Theseus, he's fine. He, like, carries the story okay. But clearly the visuals are operating on another level, so just feed me more of that. And the movie feeds me it. So that was my takeaway. And I don't know if that would be as attainable without all the god intervention.
Yeah. Yep. Right.
I don't know what it is about it, but there's something... I'm seeing something completely different.
You don't
from
like
you
their
guys.
headpieces.
No,
That's all it is.
It's not the headpieces. It's the fact that there's something about their attitude that comes across to me as very much like Supernatural, the TV show, where the the angels and demons are intervening, and then
I think it's better than that.
I think it's way better than that.
I guess I can't get over the Twilight character playing Poseidon.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Kellen Lutz, is that the guy?
Yeah.
He was the one who didn't look godly
Poseidon.
to me.
But
He was the
thing is,
only
like,
one.
I understand that that's biased. Like, the fact that I know he's from Twilight is creating a bias. But it's just there were a lot of the times where the acting just seemed very, very kind of overly staged.
No, it is stage play. It is like stage
Well,
play acting.
and
This
that's
whole
the
thing
point.
is a stage play. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
I get it.
for me.
I
I
get it.
loved the fact that they just dramatized the gods in this way with their over-exaggerated helmets and their glorification kind of themselves, even though they're on the good side.
It's simple but effective.
And I don't know, the fact that they're held back to me was never an issue, I guess. To me, it made sense that Zeus would stop them from
that
going
makes
out
sense.
to help the humans. I didn't think it was like some arbitrary reason for them to not help. He actively wanted them to have free will and not have
I just never got that
gods
impression from him that he was all that all-knowing and intelligent.
He brings it up, and by the way,
Except when he was in old man
Yes,
form.
he does. I do. No, he actually explains it to him at one other point. I also have a very streamlined explanation for the gods, so we will go over that in the next section.
Yeah, there are big story beats that we haven't yet discussed. I do want to talk about kind of Hyperion and his whole plan.
Get virgin, find bow.
Yes, get virgin, find bow. Exactly.
Release the Titans.
What do y'all think about the kind of motivation of our villain here? He's after this bow. Oh my gosh, what's it called? The
Epirus.
Yeah, Epirus. The Epirus bow.
Such a cool bow.
Yeah, this kind of mythical artifact that for
If you're a
some
Warcraft fan, it's Thoradol.
Ooh.
Thoradol it's like a legendary raid weapon that spawns magical arrows.
I'm very happy you told that.
Anyway, it's this mythical, godly weapon that is on Earth somewhere. And Hyperion is after it so that he can release the Titans because he don't like the gods.
He's mad. As I said, he prayed to them and they didn't answer, so therefore he's mad because his family died, so he's going to kill everyone else's family.
The irony being that he believes in gods more than anyone else.
Yeah.
I guess you're right. I never thought about that.
You can't hate something that you don't believe in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I thought he tried, though.
Do you think they make this bow cool enough to be kind of this game changer, this
Yes.
thing that you would want to attain?
100%.
Okay.
That's not a question.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome too. Like this, when they do finally, it hasn't actually happened yet in the story, but when they do finally unlock the bow, it does not disappoint.
All of the Greek movies we've covered so far, all the different artifacts and different types of weapons, this is the one where I'm like, that's going to make a difference. That's going to break something.
Yeah.
Well, also imagine the representation of this bow, like especially for a time period like this where infinite arrows, that's just indulgence in
More
and of
like
itself.
Infinite Eros.
What is Hyperion's end game here though? Like he just seems like he's
I said
Conquest.
I listed it. He wants to conquest, build an army, and kill the gods. That's it.
but it's like after that, it just seems like scorched earth. I'm gonna destroy.
So
everything.
he wants, he essentially wants what any conqueror wants. He mentions that he wants, his seed in most women, so that
Genghis
he
Khan,
will just
baby.
live throughout eternity or as long as humanity lives. So he's wanting to fulfill his legacy and basically cement it.
Yeah, I think he says like I want you to look into like the kid's face and see my face, that kind of thing.
Yep.
He's so comically evil.
Yes.
Like it's just like there's nothing about him that is
Redeemable.
like it's almost too much, but I love it. It's
I can't think of a villain more evil currently, but he is pretty dang evil.
yeah. Good old Hyperion.
That's conquerors for you. I mean, can you imagine a real life conqueror that would not be as despicable as him?
But it's like you have to be this kind of evil to put people in iron bowls. Like I mean, we talk about torture sometimes where you just can't understand the headspace of people that would invent something like that. And well, here you go, someone that's comically evil.
I cannot tell you just how much I hate medieval torture weapons. The iron bowl is a traditional medieval torture weapon, and this is one of the moments in the movie that made me just stop the movie.
The thought of it is very disturbing.
I stopped the movie when I first watched this, and I was like, I hate this movie. I decided from that one scene that I hated this movie, and it tainted everything. I can detach myself enough now to appreciate everything else, but I hate medieval torture weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into Freda Pinto and the oracles. 3 of them get caught in one of those bulls. So that was my eloquent transition.
It was perfect.
What do we think of Freda Pinto as Phaedra?
Yeah, I like her.
I think she's great, honestly. Like, I feel like when you're trying to portray an oracle who's just this all-seeing virgin, they don't give her a lot to work with, honestly. And I think she does well with what she was given.
Yeah, I think in this storytelling, it's one of those times where they focused on her enough, but she's not really the focus of the story. So they gave her just enough representation for me to build some kind of character and motivation and even a little sympathy because she's plagued by this gift of prophecy, but as anyone knows, that's not a fun gift to have.
A gift and a curse.
Her whole dilemma is that she's like, I'm done seeing through other people's eyes. I want to see through my own eyes.
Yeah.
Does she say that?
Yeah,
she does. Like towards the end.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right before she
loses her power.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a brief aside to Stephen Dorff as Stavros in this movie.
Could have been a little taller.
That's the guy from Blade.
That's what I said, David. You stole it.
He's also in, oh man, there's a TV show he's in. No, it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, I think. One of those.
Yeah, no one cares.
The old priest guy from the beginning is in Avengers. That guy that
True.
Loki's telling to kneel.
Yeah. But that is not Steven Dorff.
I know, but I was just thinking of reference.
He digresses.
I liked his addition because right now Theseus is, super serious, super set on what he's doing.
They killed my mom.
Don't talk to no one, and that's what his character is supposed to be. It's fine.
Yeah.
So I think he adds a little levity without being a complete clown. He's just kind of...
He's also kind of gross. Like, just the way he talks, like, what he's talking about. I'm just like...
No, it's always about women and stuff. But, yeah. But, deep down, he's a thief with a heart of gold. Because,
Yeah.
It was just a weird, like, forming of this band of brothers, I guess. Like, I thought they could have done better with that. That's weirdly something that I think Clash of the Titans does better, where they're just assembling this team. I never had any affinity for any of the people in Theseus's team.
Well,
in this
he
movie.
was just there because he had to be.
Yeah.
This movie, I think the main weak point for me is just the main character and his team. I think they could have been developed more, and they kind of went the visual direction with everything instead, which I am okay with in this case.
Noah, did you know I'm a thief? If not for these chains, I'd steal your heart.
Yeah, oh god, worst line in the movie.
But it is supposed to be bad.
Yeah. So let's quickly, before we move on, touch
on.
Let's quickly talk about Lysander, the sweaty boy that Theseus got in a tussle with, and who then promptly defected, balls. And now he's working for Hyperion.
That was probably one of the weakest points for me, because you could take him out of this movie and this plot almost doesn't change at all.
Yeah, he doesn't do really anything.
Well,
nearly nothing.
If you're thinking of Hyperion as this, great enemy that's ravaging all the land and killing everybody in his path, why would you go to him just because you were pretty much mad at some peasant?
They kicked me out of the army because he was stronger than me.
Like, I get... Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think it's a weak plot point.
It is a weak plot point, but I also think he probably, if I'm trying to rationalize it, thought that Hyperion was not as intense as what they were saying. He's probably just a king. Actually, there's another character in this movie that's kind of like that. He's like, any king can be rationalized with, that kind of thing. Not him.
I honestly think the guy's purpose in the movie was just to have that audience surrogate seeing.
Well, you might be expecting
Hyperion
some kind of reward or some form of glory from joining the other side.
In this societal structure, like being a soldier or whatever, it's like not just occupation, it's your social class. So, that's being an autonomous person with whatever rights you have as, in the Romans, you have citizenry and non-citizens and all that stuff. It's the same, like him being stripped of his being discharged from the military is not just, you're not in the military anymore, go find another job. Like, you're basically a peasant now. You're the same as all these other people you look down on.
The man that he was just fighting.
Right.
Then he
so
got
it's
stripped of a little more.
Yeah, it's not just, some, one insult slap in the face. Like, pretty much everything was taken away from him. So might as well, whatever.
His legacy.
And
but
I guess
the showing of that, I also think, is more just developing Hyperion's sadisticness.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gives us more insight into Hyperion as a villain, and it also he serves the purpose of kind of informing Hyperion on kind of where the other side is at and what's going on over there.
Yeah.
So he's kind of the informant, I guess. So his role does have purpose.
He's the same as that guy in 300 that leads him through the back of the mountains.
Oh, the hunchback guy.
Yeah.
Why is his name escaping me?
I don't know.
All right, let's finish off that story.
Back to Theseus. He, Phaedra, and his boys go back to his village to bury his mom first. He accidentally finds the Epirus bow, using it to fight the fake Minotaur that was sent to kill him. That night, his wounds are being tended to by Phaedra, and they have intimate relations. No more visions for her. The next day, they go to Phaedra's monastery, where they are ambushed, and a jackal steals the Epirus bow for Hyperion. They almost didn't make it out alive, but thankfully, Ares comes down to save them. Unfortunately, Zeus does not like that, and he kills Ares. If you're wondering why the gods aren't allowed to help, they kind of explain through Zeus that they can't intervene until the Titans are released. It's kind of a trust thing. We let you guys run your own thing as long as it's mortal affairs. Once the Titans are out, it's not really fair, so they're allowed to step in. The one caveat is if you pretend to be human, you can interfere. We can call this the Zeus rule since he does this very thing. Remember that old man who trained Theseus in the beginning? That was Zeus. Cheeky god. Okay, so the gang travels to Tartarus, where two armies are about to face off. Hyperion and the bow versus the people guarding Tartarus. Hyperion breaks down the walls, they invade. Theseus inspires them into fight, and all hell breaks loose. Literally. Hyperion sneaks in, and he uses the bow to release the Titans. And you know what that means. The gods are allowed to play ball. They all come down and start fighting the Titans. Theseus comes in and starts to fight Hyperion. It's chaos. So the gods can't fend off the Titans anymore, so Zeus decides to just destroy the mountainside or something, which will kill them and the Titans. Across the hall, Theseus finally kills Hyperion. Yay!
Yay.
As the mountain is crumbling, Theseus is assumed into the heavens, Mount Olympus. He basically did so many badass things that he gets to be a god. Years later, on Earth, there are statues of Theseus, and he has a son who is looking at them. The old man, or as we know now, Zeus, is talking to him and explains how one day he is going to have to step up and be a warrior like his dad. The kid has a weird vision of gods floating in the clouds and they're fighting. Hey, there's my dad. The end?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the gods and their kind of place in this movie. Zeus is very much against having godly interactions with humans. He doesn't want gods to assist humans. He believes that, hey, these guys can figure it out on their own. We should not interact with all that.
I think he says we trust in them so they can trust in us.
Yeah, it was the same thing, like roughly.
Yeah. I know, I'm just trying to...
Like, have faith, like they can do it, even though he still does technically embody John Hurt and help out Theseus.
Well, no, he said literally, like, use their godly powers.
Yeah.
They can give their wisdom, they can, you know, tell them...
If Poseidon went down and helped them as a mortal, I think that he would have been like, all right, you're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But some of the gods seem to disagree with this as they see Theseus in potentially a pretty dangerous position. I think this is the biggest talking point of the movie, honestly.
Really?
This scene where Ares comes in and helps Theseus out. I don't think they would have gotten out of this situation without his help. I don't. They seemed like they were kind of in an impossible situation. Ares intervened, but Zeus is very much of the mind that the humans will figure it out. He was very pissed off that Ares went down there. Obviously, he kills Ares.
He broke the rules, man.
Interaction, but he's also very much pro Theseus and wanting him to succeed.
He had a single tear coming down his eye.
Yeah, so I that's why I want to ask y'all. This is the scene where I'm like, kind of whose side are you on here? Because I think without Ares' intervention here, they would not have made it to the end of this movie.
I don't think Zeus wanted to kill Ares, and I think he understood that he just saved Theseus. But just before this, he said the penalty for disobeying and showing themselves there is death.
Yes.
And if he did not uphold his godly rule...
So there are probably people smarter than us who know about sort of philosophers and deeper thinking about why, you know, somebody would who is fighting for mortals would stay true to his own law, which, by the way, they say law as if it's like something that police are going to enforce. I mean, there's only 12 of you gods. One of you made it. probably you, Zeus. I don't know why you're kind of staying true to that, but I mean, I guess if he wrote it, he's staying true to his own word. And he sheds a tear as he kills Ares. He didn't want to do it.
I think it almost comes across to me as like a life for a life. They intervened, so he has to make it even again.
It's not fair.
Yeah,
I just wrong.
Go ahead.
You go back to the whole determinism thing. Ares had to do that, and that's why Zeus is sad, because he knew that Ares had to do that to sacrifice his life to save them.
Is that a
that was his
philosophy
fate to
thing?
do so.
That's what I want to believe that the movie is intending with that scene, where it's like Zeus realizes his, I don't know, not necessarily mistake, but, you know, the consequences of him saying that they can't intervene.
He just knows he has to do it,
Yeah,
I think.
that's definitely what I got from that scene.
Yeah, and I think that's what the movie wants you to think, maybe. That Zeus kind of put down this impossible rule, and one of these gods realizes that they have to break it to save, you know, humanity, maybe. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And just like Ares takes one for the team.
Of all people, by the way, Ares makes the most sense.
I know.
Hothead.
Cool scene, though. Love seeing kind of... And we haven't talked about Luke Evans as Zeus. I think it's a kind of an inspired choice to go with a much, like, younger, more fit-looking
All of
Zeus.
them are
All
younger.
of them. Yeah, it's
Well,
just,
I think it fits the godly
well,
energy.
it fits the word immortals as well, where it's like, yeah, they do look youthful for the most part. Like, yeah, why would the gods age?
Yeah.
But it's a cool scene especially when Zeus, you know, hero lands in
He's
that.
so cool.
It looks like a bed of diamonds that he lands in, and they're just like slow motion lifting above his feet.
Yeah.
Cool scene.
The other extremely cool god moment is Poseidon jumping down from Olympus, and
Every scene the gods are in are cool. Can we
so
say
cool.
that?
But that
The
one,
way they transform from, you know, their disguise to their golden
Yeah.
robes, like that kind of weird flash blur thing.
Yeah. It's a kind of stuttery, you know, transition.
A unique interpretation of super speed.
Yes.
Dude,
Better than Twilight.
I just think the gods are super cool, and they didn't have them go really, really far into what their typical powers are. They didn't have Zeus really wielding lightning. They didn't have... I mean, Poseidon makes the waves go, but that's through the impact into the ocean.
He has a trident.
And he has a trident, yeah.
It's very loose. Everything is very loose in this movie. And actually, I think Zeus wields fire more than he deals lightning in this movie.
Yeah, he only wields fire that one time, but that's just him grabbing the...
That's one more time than he had lightning.
Yeah, true.
So let's discuss the whole kind of trap that Hyperion sets up for Perseus. The whole, like, the kind of...
Theseus, you mean?
Sorry, sets up for Theseus and the whole kind of Minotaur fight. All of this. What'd y'all think?
The Minotaurs?
I think I wrote unique interpretation of a Minotaur. I think is what that's how I phrased it.
Yeah, there's not a lot of actual, like, mythological beasts or any of that.
There's
It's
none.
just
Just
The
this
gods
movie.
and titans.
Yeah.
Gods and titans and, like, human representations of what you would normally see as a mythological monster. Yeah.
A wireframe, a metal wireframe of a bull's head is kind of on top of a person as a helmet.
I think this was one of my favorite sets as far as a cool place to have a battle take place.
Like
among very many cool sets.
Is that like
Yeah.
an underground tomb?
It's like there's
It's the
four
labyrinth.
stairways that
That is
head up
their
to, like,
labyrinth.
yeah,
Labyrinth,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it definitely was. I thought this was really cool because they don't outright say Minotaur, but it's definitely that.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, it's really a lot better to me than the one we see in Wrath of the Titans.
So it's interesting to kind of think of it this way too, where when you look at mythology, or even when you just look at documentation of anything from ages ago, they describe things the way they know how to describe them. And it would make sense for someone to pass on this tale saying Theseus beat a man with a bull head. And then in artistic representations, that just turns into this creature with an actual bull head when it may not have been exactly.
It was kind of a wireframe helmet.
Yeah, so I think it holds up as far as that goes. It's
another movie
cool.
that kind of does that? The weirdly, The Rock's Hercules.
Yeah.
All of the various battles that he gets in with all these mythological creatures, it turns out they're all kind of elaborated stories of... Yeah, have you seen it, AJ?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all kind of like, oh, well, it didn't exactly happen that way. It wasn't a Hydra. It wasn't the Nemean lion. It's kind of fun how they play around with that mythology.
Well, you exaggerate a story because it makes it more interesting.
Yeah. And this one definitely kind of like, it's horned man. You're right.
Yeah.
A horny man.
No. No,
slightly different.
That was Stavros.
So somehow Theseus kind of... here's where the movie kind of loses me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's not because it's bad. I think I enjoy this movie. But how... And maybe y'all can clear this up for me. Maybe this is on my end, just me not paying attention. But when did Theseus kind of assemble this army?
No. Okay. I will answer this.
Okay.
And anyone else can jump in if I'm incorrect.
No, you go ahead.
The army was already being formed. Like this was a thing that was happening to combat Hyperion early on, and they showed that in the very beginning. Like that army was happening. He just knew, and what I liked about it is that he met the sort of commander or the head of the army in that scene in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And later, when he has to go back and interact with that army, he's like, hey, I know that guy. And that's how he's able to get in.
Okay. I think this movie could have done a better job of showing that. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a lot of this movie is just like, oh, he's here, and now there's all these people.
I also agree with that. I also agree because it's the beginning and the end. That's it.
I don't think there's any big reason why he couldn't have been part of that army almost the entire movie.
Yeah. Like, this movie does a poor job of just building up momentum to a certain, climactic moment. Mm-hmm. Like, it shows you all these cool, action sequences. Yeah. And, there are some great moments, but I wanted to see the ramp up to that. Like, I want to see Theseus just kind of slowly assembling this group. Or at least, like... I just feel like something was missing there.
Imagine this. That army, partway through the movie, whenever he's been captured and he went over to that place where now there are all the oracles, right? Imagine, instead, the soldiers go ahead and, they know that the enemy's there, so they attack with, a good bit of them, and that's how you have the connection between him and the army. Mm-hmm. They take him back. He proceeds upon his journey, but instead he's with the soldiers.
Yeah.
And that way you can have him develop with the army, create that kind of rapport that
like you would see
a leader would have in an army.
Like what I wanted was
or a general.
Maximus.
Yeah.
How he is like you're never not wondering why he is in the position that he is. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just he commands the screen. You understand his interactions with his oh my gosh, his group of people.
Dude, subordinates. I'm just gonna say, I need to watch Gladiator. Like, the second you brought him up, I was like, oh man.
Not yet. We'll
Which,
do it later.
By the way, that was in trivia night. There was a Gladiator question. That was the other movie.
Yeah, like if we had him doing the rally the troops type of thing, like you believe it. Like in this one when he's doing in this movie where he's doing the rally the troops speech. Nah, I was like, okay.
No, it was good. If you isolated the audio, if you looked at the words, it's not bad.
No, it's exactly.
You're right.
It's good.
No
they missed the momentousness because he should not be important to the soldiers.
Yeah, well, they went from going, I want to leave now. I'm going to drop my shield to I'm going to start banging on my shield. This guy is inspiring.
I think because his character isn't set up to be the kind that would give rallying speeches.
Yeah.
I think he's just, I have one mission, I'm going to get that done. So if he had something along those lines where it was just, short, sweet, to the point, I would remember it. Mm-hmm. I don't actually remember anything he said from
do it
the
for
rallying.
your children. Do it for your wives. Do it for everything.
I just remember them banging on their shields like every time.
See, here's the thing. That part actually is cool. But the problem is, like we said, the setup is lacking. These soldiers would not be driven by him, even though Zeus says you have to lead these people so you can win.
It's fine, but it's cookie cutter. I feel like anytime there's a scene where an army needs to, go forth into battle against insurmountable odds, there's always like, oh, we need a rallying. And you do, but you have to do it appropriate to the character.
Yeah. This is where they could have taken a note from, the Iliad or the Odyssey, in which the way they display the war is they'd have the named characters go off and show their feats to their teams, army. Pretty much. And everyone would witness them having these feats and think, oh man, this person is a great warrior. I'd be happy to follow them.
Not even just the Iliad. The movie this is trying to emulate is 300.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Something that 300 gets that this movie doesn't quite is that Leonidas is the focal point of this story.
Right.
Like, you want to follow this guy into battle.
And everybody sees him.
Yes. Yeah. I do not want to follow Theseus into this battle.
Yeah.
I would follow Leonidas into that battle. Like, every scene is, the story is centered around him, and you look forward to every moment that this guy's going to step up and do something awesome. Like, Theseus is fine. He's fine. But, like, I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to see what Theseus does next in this movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't build him up properly.
The only thing that you want to see is him killing Hyperion. And you just made me realize this. The reason this scene doesn't quite work, other than the fact that it's cookie cutter and it's just kind of cool, he has no real reason to be going to those troops. He has no real reason to inspire them to fight. His whole goal is to stop Hyperion. Why is he inspiring the troops? Why is he doing that?
Well, because he's got to hold off Hyperion's
army. He needs a diversion so he can go for the.
But if that's the case, then that is sort of misleading. It's not quite as heroic as somebody who just wants to stop the army.
Yeah,
he's like, fight them so I can go kill the other bad guy.
Yeah,
I think what it is weird. Is we need a Snyder cut.
Oh man,
the Snyder cut to the non-Snyder movie.
Yeah.
Okay, let's. The gods finally do interact in this final scene, and we've kind of been rough with our telling of this story here, but this is during the kind of final battle where Hyperion has brought all of his troops to where Theseus is, and they're having this big Helm's Deep-ish battle.
That's what I would call it.
Yeah. So the gods do intervene because Hyperion unleashes the Titans in their little caged box. And I do want to get y'all's thoughts on this movie's interpretation of the Titans, which turn out to be more like little orcs.
Little speedy boys.
Than big, stomping kaiju Titans.
Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a skinny little guy who has a bald head and can run really fast. That's the Titans.
Those are the Titans. They are things they're little creatures that can be pretty easily dispatched by these gods, but are still pretty good at getting the occasional throat slit in here and there.
So the way I interpreted this, and they kind of set it up at the beginning, is how they didn't claim these Titans were Titans. The gods named them Titans
you were
after defeating them.
Correct, Noah.
Yeah. So essentially, I think that they're different peoples that are on similar footing, and they happen to have a war of sorts. And the Titans, maybe while being locked up, maybe lost their minds a little bit.
Yeah, I wasn't saying this was a negative thing about the movie. I was just saying it's a much different
Well, your
interpretation.
descriptive words sounded negative.
I know
I
it
think
did.
okay, so I love the interpretation. I think they look cool. This concept is awesome. Very, very short amount of time that
Yes.
they actually unleash their wrath. So
In a very confined space.
Yeah,
in a very
I think
confined space.
I agree with you, Irene. I think that should have been a little more momentous. As cool as the scene was.
Well,
Yeah, what a great action sequence, by
Oh,
the
yeah.
way. I just want to say,
Yeah.
like, I almost think that scene does 300 better than 300 does.
Well, it seems like the idea of the Titans and kind of to Noah, what he was saying, they are equal to the gods. They are gods inherently. They are all the same. They
Right.
they came from the same area. They were the ones who lost.
Yep.
They are the gods who lost, therefore they are Titans. They just don't have any other weapons that the gods do. So,
Yeah.
you know, some people have hammers or tridents or whatever. They're just kind of like speedy boys. That's
And
it.
when
They're
you
speedy boys.
when you look at that battle, it's very evident why they lost.
Yeah. And another cool thing, like, the gods actually lose their lives here.
Yeah.
Athena dies.
some weight.
Or does she?
I think she does. I think
He takes her up and it shows two little
I think
souls
it's
going
Poseidon.
up.
I think it's Poseidon.
Yeah, no, Reese, at the time we were watching it, he thought it was Poseidon.
Yeah, because you never see Poseidon die.
He
You
was
see-
alive when he did that scene.
Well, no, because remember, Zeus is
was
holding.
Ah, dang
Athena.
it. You're right, Noah. You're right.
We'll see. And the thing is, we'll never get the sequel, unfortunately. Who knows?
Who knows? If you do know, let us know.
I do think they wanted you to think, like, who is it? Is it Athena
Yeah.
or Poseidon?
I don't. Doesn't matter.
I'm leaning towards you now, Noah. Actually, I didn't think about that. But you're right.
He was never dealt a death blow,
No,
Poseidon.
Athena never died on
But
screen.
he was holding her. Why would he hold her?
Yeah.
If he, yeah. Anyway, you're right. It's hard to know. But what I do want to talk about also is the interpretation of speed in this. So I don't think I've seen a movie like this where so you have two people or two different beings who can move in hyperspeed. And when you kill one of them, what happens when you kill them in
die.
hyperspeed? Well, you're right. They do die.
They
Yeah,
obliterate.
they slow down,
They
and the
slow
rest
down.
is, like, normal speed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's weird.
So everyone's moving fast, and you see this thing moving in slow motion. Does that make sense? Is that a good interpretation?
I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Visually, it was awesome. Like, I was like, I don't care if this
Well,
makes sense.
I guess it's like if you're moving in super speed, once you're dead and you've stopped, it must look a lot slower than super speed.
That's how I think they were.
It's the law of inertia. You know?
I feel like a lot of this is
equal
chalked up
opposite
to
reaction.
it looks
it
cool, though.
cancels out, so they slow down.
I don't think so. I think that once you're God, like they're in a godly state, and
Yeah.
when they're killed, they are no longer godly, so their inertia moves at a normal speed rather than a godly speed. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So we have our final fight between Theseus and Hyperion. It's very personal. I'm getting revenge on you.
You killed my mom. The
Yeah.
gods didn't help me not lose my mom.
Yeah, I thought this fight, when juxtaposed against the godly fight, was a little underwhelming.
Oh,
I felt the opposite.
I like this.
Okay. Well, I liked the line deliveries. Like everything that is said
It's so
really
good.
hits home. But from the pure choreography of the fight though was a little unimpressive to me. It's just a bunch of dudes just throwing each other into walls.
Well,
Like it.
This one is more of a symbolic fight than a cool looking fight.
And maybe that's what it needed to be against the god fight.
Because they are men, and that's, I think, why they split it up whenever they were shooting this. They had they had their fight, and then throughout the fight they cut to the godly fight, and then back, and then, And I think the point was to convey this symbolic nature of him killing Hyperion, rather than having it be just a really cool looking fight.
Yeah, and I thought the dramatic moments they nailed, like the actual this is what he says. That's spot on. But just the pure choreography of it was not particularly rousing to me. And I don't like that they don't show his big death moment. Like it's just Zeus crumbles the statues. And, oh yeah, he died. They don't show it, though. It's just like, oh yeah, he just died in
Wait,
the
who
rubble, I
died?
guess.
Who?
Theseus.
Theseus.
I guess
Oh.
he's like picked up.
Yeah, he's not exactly killed. It doesn't look like he was just granted.
He's assumed before the rock hits him.
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah, I didn't
So
know what to make of that.
I don't think he actually died. I think he was taken into Olympus before he died. Otherwise, he would have been dead down below, like Ares and all them.
Well, they kind of need him up there since they lost a lot of their main figures.
See, I saw them fighting up in the gods. I thought those just like, oh, that's what happens when they die. They're just an eternal war up there.
He just upgraded to the next war.
One of the interesting things about this movie, though, is that it's actually really biblical. Just substitute the gods for angels.
Yeah.
You know, you have that whole kind of the battle in the skies, which is like the final battle between angels, demons, and they have a lot of, like you said before, Reese, iconography or iconographic, I guess.
They did have a lot of
scenes.
iconography.
Yeah, there's so much, and I think why you kind of see it as biblical too is because so much of this is a lot of this visual or this imagery is based on classic art. And especially that final scene where you see him fighting in the heavens.
Yeah.
It's very Baroque because they would do a lot of those paintings on the ceilings where you would see all the figures kind of like in mid-action amongst the clouds. And so that's essentially what you're seeing at the very end is that in motion. So and a lot of that artwork is biblical.
Yeah. But the one thing that really brings it home as kind of a biblical work is that the whole God's free will side of things that's a very Christian thing, not typically attributed to the Greek gods who
God's
love
normally
intervening.
Yeah. True. Okay, so closing out this movie, we have Phaedra and her son Arcturus, something like that. I don't know.
Argenus.
No, it's not.
Oh man, I can't think of it. It's simple.
It's a name. Phaedra and her son. He's kind of observing all of these. Arena, you had the word for these statues, these sculptures.
Oh, high relief friezes.
Yes, the high relief friezes. Exactly. Yeah, I knew that. And
the sun is a comus.
It's
Yay, there you go.
These are basically depicting the entire movie that we just saw, and kind of teases that there is more yet to do when John Hurt's character comes up again, which we know is Zeus in disguise, and says, we will always be fighting evil. There's always work to do, such and such. Do you think this movie? I guess this kind of teases later on. Do you think this movie ends on a conclusive note, or is it kind of leaving you wanting more?
Reese, this is something you say for the very end of the podcast.
I know that. I already said that. I'm just asking.
No, it leaves more. It leaves more on the table for me.
You don't think it ends conclusively still, though?
It finishes a plot and then teases another.
It does tease another.
It's about the same level as the last movie.
All right. Wrath of the Titans?
Yeah.
Okay. Do y'all have any thoughts on the end here?
I like it. If they had a sequel, it'd be amazing because I want to know what happens next.
Yeah.
It's a cool piece of visual, visual imagery is too redundant, but it's a cool piece of imagery at the end. And I'm glad to finish a film on something that is sort of a spectacle that I haven't really seen represented in a film before. So always cool, always down to see something like that.
Yeah. All right. That closes out our story portion of the podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and on the other end, we will get into our brief reviews with numbered scores, along with some box office, what critics thought of the film, and a little bit of franchise talk. Ooh. So, yeah, we'll see y'all then. welcome back. Are y'all ready to continue talking about Immortals?
Immortals.
I know I always say, are y'all ready to talk Immortals?
Welcome back.
When we've been talking about it like for an hour and a half.
You know how
already.
frustrated I would get when I would try to look up information about this and then have to specify that it's the movie.
Yes,
and
not
because
Immortals,
it kept
Phoenix
the
Rising or
TV show
whatever.
kept popping.
Or
up.
the fact that there were actual people named Immortals.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start things off. David, you've got our reviews there. You want to pull those at random from your little bowl?
If you ask me to, I will oblige.
Okay, do it. Thank you.
All right, let's see who goes first. Actually, you go first, Reese, with a 7.
Yeah. I think this is the first movie that we've ever covered that passes based off of its visuals alone. Like, I don't think anything else this movie does really adds, merit to it, except for Mickey Rourke and some interesting conversations around the gods' motivations and like what the hell Zeus and all the other gods are doing.
It gets you thinking.
But for the most part, this is a just visual, success in so many ways. It's just so beautiful to look at. Every frame is considered to the nth degree. Like there's no scene in this movie that wasn't like calculated to utter perfection.
It
where
was.
It's like,
You're right.
Yeah, well, it has a very specific production design, very specific effects. It's just absolutely beautiful to look at in every scene. I just don't think it has a lot going on beyond that. Like, I find Theseus to be a decent protagonist. Hyperion, yeah, great villain, but apart from being utterly evil in every single way, what is he really? Like, it's this is just like, yeah, it's a badass movie, but there's not...
It's mythology, man.
Yeah, there's not a lot of substance to me. I'm not ever in on the whole hero journey here for Theseus. He's not very inspiring as a hero, even though I do, want to see him ultimately get revenge on Hyperion. I don't think it does a good job of just kind of fleshing out his character. So yeah, I do like the movie. I think it's beautiful to look at, and it's got some seriously awesome action scenes. But apart from that, it's still kind of, it could have been better.
Yeah, alrighty. So that's Roots of the 7. Next up is David with an 8.5.
Dang.
Yeah, okay, so I was between an 8 and an 8.5 for this one. And I went high. I think that compared to the other movies we've covered, I think that's what kind of bolstered this one. It felt like this one had a little bit of extra oomph that the other ones did not. And I agree with you, Reese. The heavy lifting is being done by the visuals. This one, it's no doubt. You can't watch this without thinking this is some sort of avant-garde, like, artistic piece that somehow made it into Hollywood. It's there. But I think that there is a little extra flair from Henry Cavill.
Flair?
Look, I have a little bit of spittle, okay? I'll just deal with it. Henry Cavill is actually doing more than I think you give him credit for. I also think that the interaction of the gods is very important to me. I don't think that you could cut it out at all. I think that there could have been more if I had it my way.
Agreed.
Add 20 minutes to this movie. Go ahead and make it an epic. Add in more god fights. And you know what? Sorry, maybe not god fights. Maybe add a little bit of more dialogue.
Politics.
Yeah, exactly. Politics. Bring in something that can flesh them out a little bit more, because I think they add a lot to this movie. I like the art direction. So in the end, it's weird because I did not like this movie growing up. When I first saw this, when it first came out, I hated it. This might be one of the first movies that we've covered where I saw it and I didn't like it, and I literally did a 180.
Nice.
This movie
I like that.
surprised me.
So you turned around?
I turned around and it gave it to me, and I enjoyed it. And
Wow.
Oh, wait, hold on. That's not what I meant.
Well, you did enjoy yourself.
I did. It was a movie that I would rewatch. Let's put it that way. The music was good. The acting was good. The art was amazing. There are some points where they could have fleshed things out more. The armies I could have imagined they could have made more sense of. The ending was a little loose, but in the end, I enjoyed myself. So 8.5. I would definitely recommend this movie to anyone who would want to see it, as long as you're open to avant-garde art.
Awesome.
All right, next up. Irina with a 7.5.
That's really scarily close to David's 7 for Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Is that what you're going to use? Is that what you're going to use to juxtapose? Really?
David, you did give The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor a 7
Just like his rating, mine is a lot about you could take any scene and it could be like a desktop
background. Honestly, this movie is way better than Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
You took away the 2.5 points because there weren't Yetis throwing football, right?
I hate you guys. This movie is way better.
Where are the Yetis?
Is what you screamed in the theater.
No Yetis!
Boo! Throws popcorn on the ground.
I'd love to see a review, like an official review like Roger and Ebert, and it's like, there were no Yetis. 3 out of 5.
Not my favorite.
All right,
back to my 7.5. Next up. That was it.
That's it.
So all of you have said the same thing I was going to start with. Visually, it's on point. They know what they're doing. I think that this director is very much visually guided, and it shows. I was looking into some of his history, and you mentioned the movies he was involved in, but he's also been involved in a lot of music videos.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's very clear that he has history in that, because this does feel like a really dramatic music video. And I think that's partly why I can't really get into it that much. I love it visually. I think storytelling is a little lacking. It does create a complete story, which is why it's a positive review on my end. Because for someone that's coming from the visual standpoint, it's more of a struggle to try and create a competent story to go along with that. So I think 7.5 is apt, and I just don't feel much more from this movie than I did from Wrath or Clash of the Titans. It's all kind of in the same region,
blurs
but
together
for different reasons.
Yeah.
I will remember a lot of these scenes. They'll be retained in my memory far more than Clash or Wrath, but those two films were also just fun to watch. So
yeah,
I can't really separate
positives and negatives to both.
Yeah, but still it's a good film.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Noah with an 8. Let's go, buddy.
Yes. This movie has some spectacular visuals, as everyone has said, but I think it even, like, you could take it a step further and say they have some spectacular concepts, too. Mm-hmm. And that's primarily what I'm rating this on. It like, the idea behind the way they depict Olympus, the gods, the Titans, and they definitely take their own twists on things, but they do it in probably the most tasteful way that has been done in film so far that I've seen. Like, they do lose some points as far as the storytelling goes. Like, I think they could have developed him with the army, or Theseus with the army, a little better, and a lot of those moments would have hit a little harder if they had. Like, for example, his speech would have been a lot cooler if he had developed with the soldiers, proved his feats, etc. But they didn't do that, so that's why you take away those couple of points, because just a couple areas could have been a little better. However, nothing on this I would give a failing grade. Like if you say the acting, I would give that a passing grade. The storytelling, while not 10 out of 10, I would still give a passing grade. So regular film, 7 plus the super visuals, bump that up to an 8.
The super visuals?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the storytelling's the only thing I'd give it a mild fail to. But other than that, I agree with you.
All right. And last up, we have AJ with an 8.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to take a completely different take here from everybody. And as much as Hyperion wants this to be, it's not a concrete movie. It's not how I received it. And this actually, why I respect this movie so much, we all laud the visuals. I mean, it's beautiful. The contrast of the color and the red, the gold against the dark backgrounds. And I don't think we talked enough about the choreography, is, the combat and the fights. And
yeah.
A lot of the style is really kind of championed by Zack Snyder. But like Reese mentioned, I think a lot of this is better than what Snyder does. And I respect Snyder on some of his works, but he's kind of hit or miss. I mean, take a look at, what was it, Sucker Punch? I mean, that's where you're throwing style. That's where you're throwing style at the page, and you try to have some novel idea and story, and you're like, okay, I can get behind this. I don't know why, this is so poorly received. And then 10 minutes into it, I'm like, I can't watch this anymore because there's nothing holding it together besides the visuals. So why is this different? Like the ship of Theseus, you can take the components of this movie, the structure, and change out the characters, the legend, anything else, and the purpose is the same. And that's what gives something its identity. So the identity of this movie, this work of art, was the art. And it inverts it because the delivery, the story, the characters, is normally the structure and the framework of something that we watch. Here, that's the canvas. That's the delivery method. That's the platter. And the spectacle itself is the artistry, the visuals. So we could have, a story about Hannibal in the Punic Wars or Norse mythology and, different actors, everything, and have the same art style and, twist on the tradition, the novelization of all this. And I think the intent, the identity of what that piece that was put out would have been, the heart and soul of it would have been the same. And that's what I appreciated so much about this movie and why I really appreciate it. And I just repeated myself, but the artistry of it, we all have said that it's visually beautiful. And, Reese even said, you don't usually give something so much merit just based on looks alone. But I think that is the point of this movie. And that's against tradition. Where we're not looking at, the shapes and figures. We're actually looking at the media itself. And then the story kind of bolsters it. And that's where the story does enough. And this actually really, Henry Cavill has always been respected. I have been slow to catch on to that, but I grow more the more I see of him, especially early on. Like I really respect him. And that's why I think his presentation of Theseus, who is so below what, Perseus might be or Jason, like it's not epic. This story is not an epic story, plot wise. Like everything we see is epic in its, the minutia, the actions, the slow motion, everything. But he is so grounded because of the grandiosity of the artistry around him, and even the gods on Olympus just standing down and their ornamental, their ornaments, and against the aspect of the world below them. And it's interesting that the Titan, something that is literally the name Titanic, supposedly are kind of these small little guys locked in a cage. So this whole experience for me was an inversion on the usual way I consume a movie or a film. And it's refreshing. And it allows me to appreciate something just based on the art value without I don't know, maybe this is pretentious or snobby to some people, but I felt it was a genuine way to just have fun and enjoy something without analyzing, hey, that's not Poseidon, that's not Zeus, that's not Athena, what the heck? So yeah, you change out the planks on the ship, the purpose is still the same as the art form itself.
It's interesting because I had a similar thought, and I think Reese brought this up before when we were watching a movie the other day, that I'm more of a cinephile, that I'm more of a critic than I used to be. Reese, would you say that's true?
Yeah.
So this movie, I think, because when I first saw it, I hated it. I think that it has that sort of art piece value. You go to the art gallery, wherever you are, and you see a picture of a black square on the wall, and you're like, yep, that's crap. Anyone could paint a black square on the wall. There's more to it than that. And you can see the brushstrokes, you can see the artists putting themselves into the piece. And this one obviously is a little bit more than that, but yeah, I never saw the brushstrokes. I never saw what the artist put into it when I first saw it. I think being on this podcast finally allowed me to be able to sort of be able to absorb more than just exciting adventure.
And it's like you said. Well, you can appreciate the brushstrokes of a black square, but not everyone, and rightfully so. Like, you're entitled to say, okay, that's dumb, it's a square, or Jackson Pollock splatters on a canvas. But, like Tarsem Singh says, this is Caravaggio for him, basically. So there are, you can have subjective takes on art while still appreciating the technique and make a distinction there. And that's where this is different than, say, Sucker Punch, in my opinion, because you have enough structure on the whole. And yes, I definitely agree that you could have had a little bit more emotionality from the gods, more infighting, instead of just Zeus kind of telling them this, and this, and a couple of them rebel, and definitely more lead up to Theseus's big rousing speech would have helped, and a bit more of a, I guess, climax at the end. While all the fight sequences were amazing to live in the moment, they were kind of fleeting from a time perspective. So, but I thought, it encapsulated its own emotion, what it wanted to deliver, and the story is complete. And the story, in my opinion, is not the point. The point of this is, I guess, just the enjoyment of it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. It's less about the journey and more how much you enjoyed the moment. I realize you can kind of say that about any movie. Like, it was fun. Like, I don't care about all the flaws of it. And I guess that's kind of a cop-out. For some reason, though, the way that this movie did it was novel and unique and successful for me. All right. AJ with an 8 out of 10. Do you want to crunch those numbers for us, buddy?
Group average is 7.8, which puts it below Ocean's 13, which had a 7.9, and above King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, and Ghost in the Shell, and Equalizer 2, all at 7.7.
That's very appropriate to be that close to King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, because I feel like those two movies succeed on for similar reasons.
Yeah, and Ghost in the Shell was visual as well.
Yes. Cool, so 7.8 for Immortals. Let's see what critics thought. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has a 46% out of 100, and a 48% from audiences.
Critics can suck.
What about the audience?
Lysander's missing balls.
Look, the audience also gave it a low score.
Yeah,
they can too.
On Metacritic, this movie has a 46 out of 100, which is a mixed and or average, and a audience score of 5.8 out of 10. And on IMDb, the movie has what I guess I would call a barely passing, but still I kind of look at it
6.8.
Yeah, I look at it as I look at it as negative still, but it's a 6.0 out of 10.
That's low for IMDb.
So mixed reviews across the board for Immortals. It really isn't it's not widely reviled like the Clash or Wrath of the Titans movies were. It is a little more positive than those, but it's still
better.
Yeah, it's still not where we would like it to be.
I think it's different.
It's
I wouldn't say it's
recognized
better.
as a high budget indie movie.
Yeah, and
so-
it has actually developed a cult following. So for whatever that's worth, there is a sect of people out there who like this movie.
Okay.
I guess we're part of that sect.
Yep.
With some of us.
Box office. This movie released on November 11th in 2011.
11.
It released against Jack and Jill and J. Edgar.
Oh man, I forgot about.
I remember
Jack
when
and
I
Jill.
saw J. Edgar in theaters.
What? That is not...
You know why?
Why?
Because
You were
I worked
working
at
at
the
the
movie
theater.
Yes, you're correct, AJ. I worked at the movie theater. I just stayed after my shift and watched it.
Yeah, and the movies that were still making waves at the theater during this time were Puss in Boots and Tower Heist.
Is that? Oh, okay. I remember that movie now.
Yeah, the movie's budgeted at $75 million. What do y'all think this movie did worldwide at the box office? Let's start with David this time.
All right. I'm going to say based on reviews, it didn't do great. The highest paid actor had to be Mickey Rourke. He had to be. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at $100 million. It barely made its money back. Cut it as a loss and move on.
Arena.
120.
Noah.
150.
Andrew. AJ. AJ.
David, what did you say?
100.
Okay. Wow. Wow. 160.
Dang it! Why am I boxed?
Because I was going to go for 150.
Okay, AJ is the winner on this one.
Why?
It always happens to you, Noah. It's so sad.
I know.
This movie made $227
whoa.
million worldwide.
Way more than I
Interesting.
expected.
What was the budget again?
$75 million.
I don't remember marketing for this movie, honestly.
I do. I don't remember it being seriously marketed, but I do remember seeing a couple of previews for this one.
I imagine people probably just saw the trailer and were like, that looks cool. I'll watch it.
So at the time, this was Relativity's most successful film. It might actually still be their most successful movie.
Who?
Relativity. It's like it's a studio that they make movies.
Never would have known.
You know. There has been talk about a sequel to this movie up until like 5 years ago. They keep talking about, oh yeah, Immortals 2. It's gonna happen. We've got the script. It's almost done. It's gonna happen.
It's almost done.
Because obviously it made a decent amount of money. It did enough for that you would normally think would justify a sequel.
3 times the budget.
Yes. But it just kept falling through. There's no real like insight that I have as to why it did, but they just kept batting around this like, hey, this almost completed script, and hey, we're gonna hire an Indian lead for the new movie. They kept kind of giving these little tidbits as to what this next thing would be, but never really backing it up. And I think the last word we heard from it was 5 years ago, where they said they were still working on this script for an Immortals 2, but I kind of just think it's dead in the water now. We haven't heard anything. I don't think when you've waited this long that there's any demand for a sequel. I think its time has passed.
Henry Cavill's not coming back, that's for sure.
Well, he's dead. For one, he's dead in the movie, and two, like he's already beyond something like that.
He's not
He's
even
immortal.
close to dead.
Okay, he's an immortal. Okay, sure. But I would not see him as a lead role in the next movie. He might be like, cameo.
All right.
True.
They can CGI a mustache off of his face.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, but I think the ship has sailed for Immortals, unfortunately. leads us to the end of this podcast. Do you all have any final... I guess I should say that leads us to the end where we give this a dishonorable or honorable death. And for those new to this podcast, if a movie ends on a satisfying conclusion and doesn't have any loose ends, then it is deemed a honorable death. That is given it doesn't have any sequels. But if it ends on an unsatisfying conclusion and leaves open ends, it is deemed dishonorable. So, for Immortals, is this a honorable or dishonorable death to this one film wannabe franchise?
It's complicated.
It's very complicated.
I think it's honorable.
I actually disagree. I think it's a slight dishonorable just because the Titans haven't been taken care of.
See, that's where it gets more complicated. I thought they were taken care of. I called it dishonorable because they left it open at the end.
There's a few of them that run off.
So
No, they're having that big battle in the heavens at the top.
I can see honorable if you're thinking about the film from the perspective that he completed his mortal journey. And that's the end of that. Like, there are so many movies where you know things are continued, but you also sense that the story is over and you're satisfied with it. But so I can see it being honorable.
So I want to make a distinction that just anything with a cliffhanger doesn't make it dishonorable. I think if anything, the message of this, I think Theseus says himself, like something like deeds are eternal, not what you do, or not your earthly life or something like that. So the deeds, and even that's what Hyperion is after, the immortality of his legacy. And that was a big thing in the Greek, world as well. Like the Odyssey, Odysseus goes to the shrine of Apollo because that was so important to the people who have departed. They were, the Elysian fields or whatever, their shades were kept immortal or eternal by their memory, by people remembering them. If people forgot about them, they ceased to exist. And so in Greek culture, that's the big thing is their deeds, what their actions are, that is what makes them immortal. And so these deeds that Theseus has done on Earth are done. And we remember that's what we talk about. If Acamas, his son, has something to do later on, there's probably going to always be some kind of celestial divine battles with the gods and whatever else going on. But Theseus's deeds on Earth, who he was, are done.
I'm convinced.
But his legacy is...
I'm actually with you, AJ.
I'm convinced.
I do think that this is one of those classic cases of a movie ending conclusively, but also being like, hey, if you want more, we got this.
Well, I don't know. I kind of want to push back on it a little bit because on a personal level, yes, Theseus' story, his in particular, is honorable. However, on Immortals as a whole, they left it way open for sequels, and they didn't finish the story of the gods. They didn't finish the story of his kid, who they literally said, there is more to be. Your time will come.
Okay, no, I'm just going to say, I was on your page. I was thinking that too, but I think AJ made a comment that sort of changed my opinion. I think it's the fact that you kind of have to disassociate with the fact that cliffhangers make it feel like it's incomplete.
But it's not even just a cliffhanger, it's an incomplete story.
Well,
they finished
Noah,
the whole
I see
story.
your point where this is not necessarily just Theseus, it's about the Immortals. But let me ask you this, going in and halfway through this movie, were you expecting this to be franchise about Immortals, or were we expecting this story about Theseus?
It followed Theseus, so it's kind of the same as, I guess, Clash of the Titans, in that, yes, he's the hero of this one, and I don't know, yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that that's a right judgment for, at the end of the movie, whether it should go on or not, based on how they wrap things up in general.
Sure.
So here, Noah, let me ask you this. Sometimes, when it gets down kind of tooth and nail with this franchise discussion,
Sure.
I have to ask you, what kind of denotes whether or not this is a honorable or dishonorable. I will say, do you feel hurt that you don't get to see more of this story? Is it like, oh, this movie feels very flawed because it didn't complete that loose end in your mind? Like, are you thinking like, oh, this thing can't exist on its own because it just didn't follow it up with an answer to that question that I had?
Well, you're like I said before, I say a very slight dishonorable, not a full-on raging hard dishonorable. I think it's a very slight dishonorable because because of the fact that it doesn't quite wrap up the whole story that it set out to tell.
We don't have to have a full consensus here.
Yeah.
I am actually going to defend Noah here. I don't agree with him, but I understand his take on the concept of Immortals, and this could be a franchise, and like I even alluded to myself, as this could be another hero completely with this concept of Immortals. I didn't receive this movie that way, but I understand absolutely where you're coming from, Noah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess what we can do to kind of figure this one out is let's just take it to a quick vote.
Y'all win the vote. I was just defending my point.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I think this one is more of a shades of gray than some of the other ones. So I do think we do ultimately land on honorable.
Did Irina vote? I didn't hear.
Yeah, I said honorable.
Okay.
Yeah. David, you're honorable as well. AJ, are you honorable?
Yes.
Okay, I am also honorable, but I don't think it's like a full-throated, like, yes, totally honorable. But I think it does just enough to kind of get over that hump there. And Noah is a very slight dishonorable, which is totally understandable as well. But overall, an honorable death for Immortals, which leads us to our next episode. This is the end of our Greek mythology mini-series. We're moving on into Stephen King territory. This is Irina's mini-series. We're going to start this thing off with what, Irina?
Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet. That's a werewolf noise. And this officially marks the cutoff to our awards episodes. So if you do want to hear our awards for the whole Greek mythology miniseries, that will be on our Patreon, which we're setting up.
We have a Patreon.
Yeah, so you can listen to our previous two awards episodes. They're on the main feed, but from now on, those will be behind that Patreon wall. Unfortunately,
Patreon.
There you go. So yeah, next week, Silver Bullet on and on Patreon, you'll get the bonus episode of the Greek Mythology Awards. So stay tuned, guys. We'll see y'all. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's write history with blood.